Hey, good morning. Thank you guys for being here. Um, so today we're starting with the top of chapter 2. Um, and the goal of today's class is to really push back on your own mind, to begin to examine your thinking, your perceptions. I mentioned in the email today about failure and the importance of failure. And when I talk about failure, I'm talking about it in the same way that an athlete um, would drive to bring their muscles to failure in order to grow. So if you know about weightlifting or strength training, one of the main premises is in order to build your muscles, you must tear them down. And in order to most effectively and efficiently tear down your muscles, you bring them to failure. So the goal becomes the failure of your muscles. And there's techniques to do this. And you move very slowly. You get yourself at a weight that you can push, but it's a little bit tense. And one of the methods, a very efficacious way to do this, is to press out and never release the tension, and then back in as far as you can get back without the weights touching or releasing, and then press out again. And each of these reps should be about 10 to 12 seconds. And you keep doing that until it gets to the point where you release, but you never let the weight totally go. And then you start to press, and you literally cannot move. You take it as far as you can until you can't take it anymore. And then your muscles have failed. It's at that point you've torn the existing fibers down completely, or a lot. And then now that they're torn, they will repair and rebuild stronger than they were before. This is the failure that I am speaking of when it comes to your mind. You, in Buddhism and Taoism and most of the wisdom studies, and also in science, it's clear that we do not know what reality is. I continually go back to that Donald Hoffman TED Talk where he very clearly demonstrates how we don't even have the sense organs to perceive reality as it is. So in order to go beyond the limits of your mind, because your mind is limited, we've all had moments when we've realized we're wrong, that we don't know. All of our thoughts are of the past, they're old. In order to see beyond the limits of your current thinking mind, to strengthen your mind, you must take your beliefs, your thoughts, your ideas to failure. Push them, test them, question them so deeply, again and again, until you realize for yourself that your beliefs don't work for you. It's at that point that you can expand and go beyond the limits of your logical thinking mind. The cool thing is you don't get rid of the logic. You don't get rid of the thinking. You're just not limited by its bound anymore. You can see beyond it. You can see how there's more than what you think at all times. Right? So this is how we will use chapter 2 as a great prompt for this. Chapter 2, the Tao. It's in the description below, what I'm about to read. And Lao Tzu walks us very nicely into how to perceive beyond what you think. And he starts with, when people see some things as beautiful, other things become ugly. Right? So I have some flowers here that I think are very, very pretty. And right before I put those up, I had some other flowers that were there that had died. And they were pretty gross, and the water actually smelled pretty bad. When I see one as beautiful, I make the dead. When I see the vibrant, colorful flowers as beautiful, I make the decaying dead ugly. The idea of beautiful creates ugly. The idea of ugly creates beautiful. If you can see beyond beauty and ugly, well, what happens then? What is the more that comes out of questioning the limiting ideas of you have of what is beautiful and what's ugly? Why would you put your mind through that exercise? Right? Because there's more. There's always more, right? And when I perceive the the flowers as beautiful, I have now limited my experience of beauty and awe, right? We usually move towards what's beautiful and away from what's ugly, and that has its utility. We don't want to get rid of that. But there's so many things that we unnecessarily deem as ugly or as beautiful, and then we become enamored by one thing and turned off by the other. And at some point, we realized that we were wrong, that we had limited our experience, that we had limited our selves through that idea of what was beautiful or ugly. Right? What I like about how he does this in this chapter is beautiful and ugly are really easy for us to perceive. We can so easily understand that when I see those flowers as beautiful, I can take, there's a plant over here. I have a peace lily over here, and the topmost, I don't know if you know the white flowers that come out of a peace lily, the top one is beginning to decay and die. And it doesn't look pretty. And the idea might be to just cut it off. If you've experienced peace lilies, it's never a good idea for the health of the plant. To just cut away the dead, right? We talked a lot about death last week, right? And how death is life. And if you want to dig into that more, go look at last week's live, a week ago this time exactly. I think it starts with the word retake, because at first there was a problem with the video, which is thankfully fixed now. You realize that life isn't death, death isn't life. You realize you can go beyond the limits of the thinking mind into more, right? But he starts us off with beautiful and ugly because it's really tangible. I can so easily see how my perceptions of human beauty can limit me seeing real beautiful things. It limits my experience, yeah? And so I expand into the more when I can see beyond my ideas of beautiful and ugly. Good, fine, we get that. You can see that. For most people, that's a pretty tangible thing that they can get. Oh yeah, I can examine, I can question my mind, starting with what's beautiful and what's ugly, and begin to see that things I think are ugly are actually beautiful, and maybe things I think are beautiful are actually ugly. And at some point, you begin to see how everything contains both, right? That there is everything within everything. Fine. Then he gets a little more complicated at the next line. When people see some things as good, other things become bad. This one's tough because there's things we see as good and bad that are really useful or necessary. If, someone, this is a nice actually one in America right now, because this is controversial. If someone was to take out a gun and start randomly shooting people, like a lot of people, myself included, we see that as bad. So how does me not seeing that as bad help me? Right? And how is it that, if someone is going around and giving bread to people on the street, most people, you'd see that as good. Ooh, then other things become bad, right? So it's asking you to question your limits of good and bad, your ideas of good and bad. And it's not just as in beauty and ugly. Pardon me, I'm not feeling great. It's about seeing beyond your concepts, seeing beyond the limits of your ideas. When you get beyond good and bad, you can see the nuance underneath it. You can see how, if I don't know what's right or wrong, I can actually act more directly. That seems counterintuitive at first, and this is why it's important to take the ideas to failure. To really press into, what does it mean? How could it be that by seeing this as good, I'm making other things bad, or seeing that as bad as I'm making other things good? And how is that not good? How is it not good that I see this as bad and therefore avoid it? Yeah. How is it bad that I see something as good? Because when I deem something, this is one take on it, there's so many different ways to break this down, but one way to break this down is, if I see this glass of water as good, right, I will covet it. I will grab for it. I will want to hold on to it. If I see this cup of water as bad, I might want to get rid of it. Get out of it. Move it away. Either way, I'm acting out of grabbing or aversion, desire or hatred, right? And when I act from those places, well, that's when I create my own suffering, right? This actually is really important in business and negotiations, and any relationship as well. Because if I see, say I'm a manager and I see a certain behavior that is actually someone's stealing, right? And, small nuance thing, they bring a lot to the team. They're a great player. They bring a lot of, I don't know, revenue or camaraderie or something, but then we find out that they're stealing. If I just go to that person as bad and fire them, one, I miss what's going on underneath. I miss an opportunity to learn. I might inadvertently send the wrong message to the rest of the team, and numerous other potential negative externalities. Alternatively, if I don't take action, there are other potential negative externalities. If I can see beyond this is good and this is bad, and come at it with curiosity, this is that I don't know what's going on, bring it to failure. When I'm not locked into grasping for the good or pushing away the bad, I can now have more intimate conversations with the person, with the situation, with myself, right? Politically in the US right now, we're very divided. And we all know that if you just shut someone else's point of view down, they're going to dig in their heels, and you do as well. You're so trying to assert your point of view or protect your point of view that we actually end up each sticking our heels more and more into our own place, right? Not very efficacious. Not even politically, just relationally, right? If I see someone else's point of view as bad, I cannot hear them. And if I can't hear them, I can't connect to them. And if I can't hear them, most likely I also can't hear myself. Yeah. So this is just one way that moving beyond ideas of good and bad have a real utility, practical utility in communications and business and other things. But it's actually much more important than that, because inherently nothing is good or bad. These are language-based judgments, language-based ideas that we as humans have put on top of things, right? They can sometimes and often do have a utility of what to avoid and what to move towards. But that utility is pretty limited. And if you are bound by those definitions, you miss out on a lot, right? When you're open to seeing beyond the ideas of beautiful, ugly, good, or bad, just open to it, you can begin to relax and have deeper connection, not just to another person, to existence. Because existence itself is neither good or bad. And this has pretty huge implications, because when we're driven by what we want, or by trying to get what we want or avoid what we hate, we're almost always acting out of our own integrity, outside of our own integrity, right? We are actually not happy with ourselves. And this is very nuanced and subconscious, but it's really interesting to see how much of our hatred and our desire is bound in a sense of trying to keep yourself safe, protected, static. And here's the thing, nothing is static. Life never stops moving, right? Which brings us to the next line, which is really where beautiful and ugly and good and bad are leading to. Being and non-being create each other. Now this line alone was the source of last week's entire class. So I'm not going to spend too much time here, but he's walking you in quite nicely. So being and non-being create each other. Another way to, what's being? Life. What's non-being? Death. Life and death create each other. What he's trying to demonstrate here is that a concept to one extreme creates the other extreme. And these are concepts, they're not inherent in reality. There is no beautiful, there is no ugly. There is no good, there is no bad. There is no life, there is no death. And this no life, no death thing is really the crux of things. That gets back to why we create ideas of good and bad. We're trying to protect ourselves. And if you really take your ideas to failure, getting back to where we started with today's class, if you really take your concepts to failure, at some point you realize there is no self to protect. There is no unending, there is no beginning to protect from ending. It's just continual movement and change. And if I try to hold on by saying that this is beautiful or ugly or good or bad or life or death, I miss life. We don't know what life is. We don't know what death is. But we do know it's nothing but movement. And grasping on to beautiful, ugly, life, death, good, bad, holds us in the past. It holds us in the past. Now is always unknown. It's always fresh and new. And that's where this chapter is really pushing us towards, is to live awake and alive in the now without the limiting ideas of beautiful, ugly, good, bad, life, death getting in the way. And if you are willing to really test your mind and strengthen your mind by testing it, by testing your ideas, really questioning them, journaling about them, digging into them and finding the pit holes in every single concept you have, what it does is you realize you can't believe yourself. And in that is a great freedom, is a great life, because when you realize that all of your thoughts are false, that you can't rest on them, you stop resting on them. You actually, and if you really, I encourage you to really test out your mind, to really try to journal this and think about this and contemplate this, because this is where your life can open up in ways that I can never explain. Because it's like trying to explain a mango to someone who's never had fruit or sugar, right? You cannot explain it. You must taste it. You must feel it in your body. And when you feel beyond the limits of the mind. You are not getting rid of the mind, but you're engaging so much more of yourself. And in that is a connection. And then as it's said by all of the wisdom figures, you realize that you don't die. You realize that there is no death. And there is a great freedom and a great relaxation that comes from there. And it starts with examining your ideas of what's beautiful and ugly, your ideas of what's right and wrong and good and bad, really examining your own mind, becoming aware of what you think. Because if you're not aware of your beliefs and what you think, your mind is using you. Your ideas, your beliefs, your subconscious scripts that were born out of events when you were too young to even be fully understanding of what was going on, they begin to drive your entire existence. And that leads to a lot of people suffering. Actually, as far as I can tell, it leads to all suffering. And we suffer a lot. We suffer a lot. And there's so much beauty and ugly and good and bad and life and death to live. To not be limited by the beauty, the ugly, the good, the bad, the life, and death. And I realize that these are words that at this point don't make sense, but if you can sit and if you can journal and think about this will become so clear. Examine your mind, examine your beliefs, take them to failure, push them, challenge them, question them, not for anyone else, but for yourself. You know that your thoughts about anything, if you really look at it, are of the past. They're past impressions that you're carrying into now. And as long as you're thinking from the past, which if you're thinking from the past, you cannot have anything but the past repeat itself into your future. To have a different future requires different thinking, different ways of seeing. But you can't see differently until you examine your current beliefs so much that they just fall away on their own. So he walked us into the big one, life and death create each other, and then he walks us back out just as nicely. Difficult and easy support each other. You know, if I think that something is hard, it's going to be hard. If I think that it's easy, it's going to be easy. You get to choose. Which is it going to be? If you can be aware that you're thinking that this is hard, you can change it and be like, no, it's easy. And then just test it out. Take it to failure. Experiment. Whoa, it's easy. It was just my mind that created the script. Holy crap, it's just my mind that creates the script. Whoa. Difficult and easy support each other. Long and short define each other. I'm a relatively tall girl. I'm 5'9". So by the definition of someone who's 5'2", I am long. By the definition of someone who's 6'7", I'm short. I'm neither long or short. I just am. I'm only tall in comparison to a glass of water. I'm tiny in comparison to the building that I'm living in right now. It's relative. High and low depend upon each other. You can't have the highs without the lows, they always say, and they're not kidding. But examine it. Right? Really examine it. Before and after follow each other. Now we're getting into that there is no time. And I mean, this is how Einstein figured out everything that he figured out. He examined it. He took his ideas to failure. And that's really what I'm encouraging you to do today. Because you get one life that we know of. This form is only here for a very small fractal of time. I will be gone soon. The life I get to live and experience depends on my mind. How I experience my life depends upon my mind. And unless I can see through my ideas, I am trapped by my ideas. Unless I can see through my past experiences and the habitual reactions that I habitually designed in my body to navigate those things, unless I can become aware of them, question them, and reprogram them, that habit becomes who I am. We all are totally capable of change, but you cannot change anything without awareness. Because if you're not aware of it, you can't change it. And to become aware of it, you've got to really dig in. Our beliefs are so deep and subconscious, but they reveal themselves with some deep questioning if you can take the time to take them to failure. The best way to do that, in my experience, is to start with sitting. I have on the YouTube, not on the live section, on just the regular ones, I have multiple sitting practices that you can just listen to. I walk you in. I think we only sit in silence for 5 or 10 minutes, but I walk you into the silence. It's the silence that's key. Don't miss the silence. Don't pick up your phone. Don't look at, whatever. Do like me. Unplug the Wi-Fi for hours every day. It's great. Turn your phone to airplane. Unplug the Wi-Fi. Go totally offline. It's fantastic. I highly recommend it. You will be bored and frustrated and pick up your phone 1,000 times initially. But eventually you will sink into the quiet and you'll sit and you'll just breathe. And then you'll sit there and open up your journal and you can write and contemplate. Be like, ooh, that was interesting. Why did I think that? Where did that thought come from? Dig into yourself until your own beliefs that you weren't even aware of reveal themselves to you. And then you begin to question them, take them to failure, and then do that as long as it feels right, and then sit again. Let it cook. You don't have to think about it, fix it, solve it. You just breathe. It will cook within you. You do this repeatedly. Over time, your life just gets bigger and bigger and bigger because your mind is getting bigger as you work through the limiting ideas of north and south and before and after and good and bad, which are all projections anyway. You get bigger and bigger. And that's what I want for everyone. Live a big, full life. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up. It means a lot to me. Thank you for those who are watching on the replay. I hope to see you all on Thursday where we actually practice the sitting, because it's not until you're quiet enough and still enough that you can even see your mind enough to be fully aware of it. So the practice is key. I hope you can practice with us, or you don't have to practice with me. There's 1,000 ways to practice. Find something that works for you, but do it. This is your life. With much love. See you guys next week. Same place, same time. And the link to get the link to class on Thursday, the live class, if you don't already have it from the email I sent earlier today, there's a link in the description below to get the link to the live Zoom class on Thursdays. Thank you guys. Much love. Bye.